and we're going to get going. So I'm psyched about this Hangout presentation tour de force that we're going to go on today. We're going to be covering some of what we did as a result of that, the presentation that Christina and Emily brought us last month, maybe 6 weeks ago, around event-based teaching. We're going to show you how we rolled that out into our program. As many of you know, for 2020, moving into the EFL was new for us. We had done a lot of work with Greg, and we were moving more specifically into our model around getting to essential skills that are going to have a bigger impact on the lives of the individuals that are in our program. Our program is primarily made up of individuals with intellectual disabilities, with and without autism. So it really fits into that, that wheelhouse around the EFL and addressing individuals with moderate to severe disabilities. So as we kind of move down this route, one of the areas that we had been working on with Christina and Emily before was how exactly they make EFL move in their program. And so when we finally got around to the training last month, it really gave us a lot of encouragement to move forward throughout our program. So what we're going to present today are actually 6 different teams that went about presenting or working through this EFL event-based teaching in their programs. And they're going to describe a little bit about their program as they go into their individual presentations. Each presentation is, I told them to do about 10 minutes. Tabby Collins put one together that was at least 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I asked her to slice that a bit, and I think we're going to deliver our product at the end. So they're going to go through each of those. And what I thought would be most helpful, certainly put some questions into the chat along the way. At the end of each of their presentations, we'll give a minute in case anyone has some individual questions. What I asked them to do was not only focus on content, but process. I think that's one of the big areas that a lot of us are struggling with. The EFL is, how do you take from an individual assessment and move it through a program-wide treatment? And so that's what they talked about, just as their groups, how they took that information and were able to move to the events that they're going to show you today. So without further ado, I'm going to have each of the supervisors present their group and then go from there. So Scott Tanner, I'm going to have you lead us off.
Okay. Kelsey Japolsky in a minute will be presenting her work that she did in one of our residences. It's a 12-bed ICF program. And she worked with, collaborated with the recreation specialist to initiate this activity-based learning. They're early in the process, and that's why she's up front, is we wanted to sort of show a progression from people early in the process, people who are more middle process, and people who are farther into it. We thought that would be helpful. And I will let Kelsey begin to share her screen and talk about what she did in this first activity.
So like Scott said, we're a 12-bed ICF in the Utica campus. What I'm really thankful for is that Carrie Thomas, our rec specialist, she was very gung-ho. I just told her we need to do an activity, and I'm going to just put some learning, pretty much probing learning skills into it. And she was just like, okay, let's do it. And she didn't know what I was talking about, but she was ready to go. So I really appreciate that. We also, during this time, had 2 residents who were having some issues. So it was kind of, they were having some challenging behaviors, and it was kind of good to get the rest of the students to be in another area. And this did provide a good opportunity to do that. So we did this by just playing 1 round of bingo. I thought I could just plan this and I could go through everybody's quick assessment. I could have skills already lined up of what I was going to track, and I should know better that with anything I've ever done in this field, I can plan all I want, but when I get to it, you see so many surprising things, so many new things, so many things you didn't expect to happen. So 6 out of the 12 students in the house participated, which was a surprise to me. I didn't think, and the people who did say yes, I did not expect them to. With bingo, there's a lot of different learning opportunities. I mean, there's listener responding skills just in the game itself, where they have to be able to listen to what number's being called, and they have to be able to recognize that number, put their marker on the number. There's requesting skills that are inherent in before we even start the game. And I also threw in some recognizing, retrieving, relocating skills. And there is, it should be noted that we just started introducing universal protocols into this house. So having this activity helps to facilitate all that universal protocols has. Okay, so when I asked Seamus, I'm like, you want to play bingo? He's like, yes. And I'm like, okay. So he was ready to go before we even had anything ready. And so I had to ask him to sit and then wait in the designated area that I told him to. So that satisfies 2 listener responding skills in that category. He only had to wait briefly. He did a great job with that. But it's something that, with this particular student, he has difficulty, you have difficulty having instructional control with him, especially when he's engaging in stereotypy. So it's good to keep throwing these listener responding skills at him and to see how he responds. So as any behavior analyst does, sanitize the environment just to see what happens. Like, this is just an experiment. I didn't give them anything that they needed. They didn't have their bingo boards. They didn't have a marker to use on their bingo boards. And that left 2 man targets available. And they did just as I thought they would do. They did nothing and sat there because it just shows that our learners are so used to us just wanting to, it's not anybody's fault. It's just people want to make sure that the people we support have what they need, and they're always giving it to them to make sure they have it. But it really doesn't help them with that opportunity to ask for that item, to practice their requesting skills. So after I did prompt, what do you need? They were able to do that, but it did show that that's a skill that needs to be worked on. I also let them have choice, even just as simple as choosing the color of their marker that they were going to use to mark their bingo cards. When you present any choice with any activity, it really helps the learners get engaged and makes them feel more involved and more happy, relaxed, and engaged. At the end of the game, only one of the students hung out with us. Everybody else kind of pieced out before we even were, basically right when we said, oh, the round's over, they kind of left. But he stayed, so I was like, hey, good opportunity to practice putting things away. So I asked him to pick up the container and put the container in the cupboard. In order to do that, he needed to be able to recognize the container, retrieve that container, and relocate it back to the cupboard. Something that was in mind was to just to see who would participate. And 2 students who had formal ICF goals to participate in group activities actually were with us, and that was surprising to me. One student stayed for the whole round, and she did play the game as the rules indicate. The other student, Dewey, on the right, he just had the bingo card and he colored it in. But you know what? I'm happy that he was with us. I didn't care that he was not participating in the way that the game says to. That's a big step for him to even sit with us and to even engage in an activity in general. There's also another surprise with another one of our students. One of the staff was filling out the bingo card for the student, and I saw that he was just sitting there. He had his sensory item. He was twisting it around, and I'm like, okay, what if you just prompted him to hold that marker and then possibly hand over hand to get him to mark the bingo card? And once she gave him a marker, he was just happy and excited. And we got to see a little bit of Zachary in a happy, relaxed, and engaged state. He was smiling. He was very excited. So things that we learned from this, we should always ask our learners to participate, even if we think they won't. There are a lot of kids that some staff will say, oh, that person won't join us for that. They don't like those kinds of activities. But it's always important to try because you never know. We had students who we didn't expect to participate do so that day. Incorporating activities helps increase staff engagement. This also goes along with universal protocols, that it really helps them to see what universal protocols really is and how it's used. The more we let our learners do in a task activity, the more engaged they're likely to become in it. We saw that with Zachary, that letting him mark the bingo card himself made him happy, relaxed, and engaged. And all activities present learning opportunities. Just in one round of bingo, we proved that. And we all learn best when we are happy, relaxed, and engaged. Okay.
So you can unshare your screen now.
Okay. So is there a button for that? Oh, okay. Thank you.
So as Stephanie mentioned, or as Kelsey mentioned, this was just at the very initial stages of planning. It was getting things going and sort of learning how to move forward from there, which she nicely highlighted.
All right. Next, we're going to move on to John. You know, there was a question in there. I'll come back around to that one. Next, we're going to move on to John Horn, who's our senior BCBA over in our adult programs. Our adult programs are actually quite a bit larger number of residents that we have in our adult programs, where it's around 240 adults that live with us residentially.
Very cool, thanks. Yeah, so we started after we watched Christina and Emily's presentation in November, I think it was. So after watching Victory Academy's presentation, we were looking to start the event-based learning in 2 homes for adults. Similarly, we're just going to be showing pictures in this presentation. So in the houses, they are both really fun houses, all men, mostly in their 20s and 30s. And so for this presentation, we really wanted to focus on what it takes to get started with the process of event-based learning. So for starters, don't overthink it. It's really easy to overthink it. Kelsey talked a little bit about this. You know, what materials do we need? What data do we need to collect? Which specific goals are we going to target? And as you can imagine, there are often all kinds of obstacles when you're working in residential settings. So instead, just pick a natural activity, something that is already occurring, such as meal times, outings, cooking, cleaning, games, activities of daily living, etc. And remember, the event itself isn't, just remember that the event itself isn't always the main skill that we are targeting, but it provides that natural context to work on a variety of other skills. So, and hopefully it provides a better opportunity for generalization. So our advice is to just go and do it. Just run the activity and observe. You know, you're going to get so much information that you need from starting and moving that you otherwise wouldn't have from just planning and trying to pick the right goals and the right activities. But if you just get started, just run the activity, just like Kelsey did with her game of bingo. You can very quickly see who participates, who doesn't, how long do they participate. What are some clear skill deficits? What do they want to do instead? You know, so we have a big focus on universal protocols, which I'll talk about in a second, but we're always trying to find that synthesized reinforcement. You know, what do they want to do instead? Oftentimes, we would get an activity going for the adults and we would find that we'd be trading off time, you know, playing air guitar in the bedroom, listening to some music videos and rocking out and having some hot chocolate. And then we would trade off that period of time to go, you know, do something that was more staff-led or adult-led. Remember, this is all good data. Just get running and see what that data, what information you get from starting it. So we saw some obvious skill areas to target, especially those essential 8 skills and other must-haves. So, you know, for some, it was just showing up became the goal, showing up and participating even a little bit. For others, we were working on more essential communication skills. Then you can take a look at how you want to plan your data collection. Oftentimes what we're using and what Pat McGreevy recommends is that first trial of the day data collection. It tends to be the easiest. Okay, so our activity that we chose is cooperative games. The reason why that is in these homes, we're using an approach called an approach to building trusting relationships called universal protocols. And if you're familiar with the PFA and SBT process, universal protocols is basically a way to help us find happy, relaxed, and engaged, or HRE, as you might hear, for each of the people we support, so that participation and skill building is something that the people we support are electing to do or motivated to do. For one of these homes, we found that most of the challenging situations involved competition for staff attention. Is often negative peer-to-peer interactions such as taunting behaviors or even aggression was occurring. So as you can imagine also, there are many limitations related to COVID, and that only amplified some of these challenges. So we were already looking for a way to create HRE within these peer-to-peer interactions. So the idea of cooperative games was not far off of our radar. So our goal was to build rapport between peers within a shared activity. But then we found that cooperative games really provides an excellent context to work on so many other skills. So I'll just go through some examples of some of the games that we looked at. So one game is called Minefield. In this game, you put mines down on the floor. Somebody can be blindfolded. The people we support just chose to close their eyes, and their partner has to walk them through the minefield so that they don't step on a mine. Uno, not exactly a cooperative game, but the way that was one of those trade-offs that we ended up doing. But there's so many opportunities within Uno. It's basically a triple R game. So really cool opportunities. If people are having fun and they have steam and they have motivation, just run it. There's so many cool opportunities for skill building. Other cooperative tasks are BSA Connor Thompson came with a fun list of activities that I think he stole from his college orientation. But there's just, you know, cool things that you can do as a group. Like in here, you have to move a hula hoop. And in this case, we're trying to get it on to Connor. He's moving and shaking a little bit. The guys are having a blast. Scavenger hunts, cooperatively. Marshmallow towers, admittedly, this is a Google image pic. We didn't run this one, but it's just a good idea. Charades was just a ton of fun. So naming and describing, there's just so many opportunities for skill building. And then bingo. So here's a list of skills. I won't read through them, but these are just some obvious skills that we can embed within these activities. Requests, just staying within the group and increasing that duration. Turn taking, the triple R, recognize, retrieve, relocate, naming and describing. And also, you saw in several of the pictures, the people we support are wearing their masks, and within this fun context, the toleration of each step of putting on a mask and then and shaping the increased duration is something that you can target as well. Okay, Elena Wormwood is here, and she's going to present on some of her experience running this as well.
Yeah, so we have had so much fun getting this up and running, and we have learned a lot along the way. Similar to what John and Kelsey were saying, for me, the biggest surprise was who decided to participate and who didn't. I spent so many hours trying to plan the perfect activity, and I had like this long 6-page document with goals outlined and a progression of what it would look like, and it didn't pan out like that at all, and I realized that that was okay. We got a lot of really valuable baseline data about who was there, who wasn't, and then how we could maybe shift the event for the future to make it more enjoyable and more reinforcing. We also learned a lot of really good information about some pre-existing skills we weren't aware of. We've been working with a learner on some really basic manding, and we had set a goal just to get 3 mands via sign. He has a really limited verbal repertoire, and he basically spends all of his time in bed on his tablet. So what we were doing was going into his room, doing some pairing and rapport building and getting him happy to see us, and then we would remove the tablet from him and immediately go into a full physical prompt to get him to sign for tablet. And we did that for about a week, and we didn't see any problem behavior, which was really good. In the past, that has caused severe problem behavior. And about a week into it, we were doing a full physical prompt for him to sign for the tablet again, and he independently emitted a vocal approximation to iPad. So that gave us some really great information on how we could potentially change some goals that we had for him. We also, in some of the bingo pictures that you saw, we had a learner working on triple R, and we were definitely not expecting this, but he was doing it perfectly. He seemed really interested in the bingo cage, so we gave it to him and he independently spun it. He retrieved the ball from it, recognized the number on that ball, and then relocated it independently to the master sheet with 100% accuracy. So overall, just a lot of skills and a lot of things emerging that we weren't expecting, but were amazing to see. And it gave us a lot of information about targets we can have moving forward, potentially some different ways that we can switch up our instructional delivery, and some reinforcers and ways to make this an event that everybody wants to participate in. So overall, like John said, the main takeaway for me was to just get it going because it looked a lot differently than I was expecting, but we got so much information that was really necessary moving forward.
Cool, thanks Elena. And Connor is going to reflect on his experience as well. Connor is a BSA and working residentially. Cool.
So I'm Connor Thompson. Right now I'm Zooming from my car because I just got a COVID rapid test. I'm negative, so don't worry, I'm all good still. Radical. But here we are. So in my opinion, cooperative games really help establish happy, relaxed, and engaged between the people we support rather than apart. I believe in that creating a dynamic, accepting, and most of all fun environment. We allow the people we support to not just tolerate being in the same space as each other, but actually enjoy the time spent together. So in the hours following our second trial of cooperative games in this one house, the mood in the house was much lighter, and my role as a BSA puts me in a really unique position because I work 1 to 9 p.m., which are like the prime leisure and dining hours. And that evening I was tasked with cooking, and don't worry about me. I'm not being like used by staff to get out of doing things. It was on my own volition. But regardless, as I started to get ready, 2 of the people most involved in the cooperative games came up to me independently and asked if they could help. And I was over the moon. I said, yes, definitely. If you want, you can help cut up some vegetables for the sauce I'm making. And so they retrieved all the items that they needed and got to it without me. And that's when I started to do some analysis. So it's not necessarily any hard data. It's more so like participant observation, if I want to like go back to my sociological roots. But I noticed that there's an increased toleration of each other. There's more turn-taking, sharing, cooperation, and a decreased need of attention from me. So I was just doing my thing and they were doing their thing independently. And that's when I realized that the natural environment could also be a place to embed a lot of these EFL goals. So all in all, the cooperative games and the natural environment can be a really great place to embed some really amazing goals and help generalize cooperation, teamwork, and most of all, promote friendship. So thank you.
Thanks, Connor.
So before we jump back to another presenter, I know Solani had a question earlier and we sort of rolled through a number of presenters, but hopefully you've heard that really what we're doing in these situations is getting a sense of where that individual is so that we can teach in a natural context. In Kelsey's situation, it was the first time in an activity like that in the house where we were looking to embed skills. So she was getting a sense of where the individual was based on the EFL in some identified areas of need so that we could use that as a way to build forward in a more natural teaching context. So, great question. Thank you.
And great answer, Scott Tanner. Hillary Laney, do you have a question for the group? And I will say, I'm getting anxious about the time. I know everybody wants to keep this to an hour and a half. If the question seems like they're going to be too long, I'll try to move those to the end. But if it seems like something we can answer, then we will get to it right now. With that being said, Hillary Laney, what's your question?
I think it's quick. I'm really been inspired by you guys, so thank you, because I'm about to get started with EFL for the first time, and I've wanted to do that for a long time. But I'm curious if anyone, even in a presentation coming up, could share if they're skipping some of the goals around toleration and manding, if they're also running SBT at the same time, just for my own knowledge, or like how you're taking the data on those if you are targeting them through EFL. Like, if you could share some of the combination of those two for me, because my practice is all SBT and I'm starting EFL, and I'm just curious how exactly, or even some level of precision to combine those early goals in the Essential 8 would be so helpful for me. So thanks.
Dr. Mara gave the quick nod, so I will make sure that she touches on that once we get up to her crew, which will be our last group that we'll present. All right. Any other questions right now? Nope. All right, we'll move on. So next we are going to move to Utica Trade Winds, and Bree Alsasser is going to present her team.
Yeah, I'll do just a quick intro. My name's Bree. I am the senior BCBA who oversees behavioral treatment for our Utica program. We are one of the 3 Tradewinds educational centers here at UCP. We are the largest of the 3, where we've got 16 classrooms and about 100 students across those 16 rooms. All different ages, all different ability levels, and all different skills that we're working on. We're also in this interesting period that I know a lot of you are probably in as well, where we're trying to pivot on sometimes a daily basis, depending on COVID and what it looks like in our community and in our schools. So I'm going to turn things over to Kelly and Jamie. Kelly is the BCBA who works with Jamie to support her classroom and their behavioral treatment. And they are currently one of our kind of hybrid classrooms. So they've got a mix of both day students who typically would come in on a daily basis, going into this most recent shutdown period that we're in, where those day students are virtual learning only. They were on a hybrid model where they would come to us 2 days per week and get bussed in. But currently, because our numbers are really high in this area, we are doing virtual learning only for a little bit. So they've got a mix of both residential students and day treatment students. So I will turn it over to Kelly and Jamie and talk about the awesome things they've been doing.
Sorry, guys. Just had to unmute me there. All right, so I'm Kelly Gallagher. I'm the BCBA for Classroom 12, as Bree just introduced me, and here's Jamie. I'm Jamie Linkwer. I am Classroom 12's teacher, and this is our event that we came up with for our classroom. So we came up with this event after watching the Victoria Academy presentation. And we got some ideas from them. So this is just the Utica Tradewinds demographics that Bree just went over. I'll talk a little bit about the demographics of our classroom. So we have 6 students in our classroom. However, due to the hybrid model, we only have about 4 that were included in this event. They're the age range of between 12 and 17 years of age, and we have a very significant range in skill levels in our classroom. So This is a good example of how to differentiate a lot for your students. We have kids who are working on skills like math and very advanced skills, and then we have kids who are still working on a lot of the toleration communication skills from the EFL quick assessment.
So for our event, for this presentation, we came up with a store. So one of our students actually is in love with the seasons, and this is one of his favorite time of the year is Christmas. So we actually asked him what he wanted to do for this thing with our classroom. So he came up with a store. So together we made it the Tradewind Seasonal Store. Our students did so much with this. It was just from the beginning to the end, like the students and the staff were both engaged through the whole process. It incorporates student preferences, like the holiday theme, because that is one of his major themes. And
then we also chose this because there were a lot of opportunities to practice the skills that we had identified for our students. In the last presentation, John Horn spoke about how there was a lot of overthinking in the process. So for a long time, we were thinking about what event can we put in? What are the goals that we can target for our students in these events? And really, we just decided to throw the store into place, put it together, and then we were able to develop goals around the things that we were seeing as we were going through the different stages towards this event. We were able to incorporate a lot of the communication and toleration skills, weighting, turn taking, and then some more of the advanced skills that some of our learners were actually able to do, like counting, addition and subtraction, making change, some of those more complex communication skills that are more in tune with the event. And then here's just a short clip of, so the first part of the event was the students making the items. So our students are very excited. Right here you see them making reindeer food. They're going to make reindeer food and sell them at the store so that people can buy the food and spread them out into the yard for the reindeer. Students are very motivated by the holiday themed things. So we have the reindeer food, they have different ornaments, crafts that they were making, different home decor. And then from that, we were able to incorporate. So here we have our 7 making requests for highly preferred items. So we have a lot of students still working on manding. And then we also have making transition from preferred items and activities to required tasks. This is something that we were able to target for all of our students. So, and this skill right there really, making the event really helped us with this skill, because once we started making learning more fun and the students learned like, oh, the things that you're asking me to do are fun, and at school we're making crafts, we're doing these things, we saw a lot of change in our students. Putting down the iPad became more frequent, and students were choosing to do the activities rather than selecting the iPad, which was really nice to see.
And in this slide as well, in the pictures, we have a very wide range in skill level, where we have one of our girls in the classroom. She is one of our higher functioning students, where she actually independently sat down and made this craft all by herself to sell and things. And then you see one of our staff members helping hand over hand with one of our middle functioning children. And we have one of our students up in the top corner that he may not be able to tell you everything that he wants to do or how to make certain things, but for him to just come to the table and participate in the activities that we were having, and just to see the joy that it brought to his face, it was just amazing, because that's stuff that he wouldn't tend to normally.
That's a good point. So that just goes to show when learning was made fun and we had these fun events and ideas in the classroom, we did see a lot of positive change without even putting programs in place. This slide just exemplifies some of the prompt fading that we used. We made sure to really increase independence for our students in the classroom. So you can see Jamie, the classroom teacher here, modeling how to make the crafts, fading into point cues, and then you see the students engaging in the activity independently. So one of the processes that we did during the store was actually setting up the store. So you see some of our students going out. We actually set up an area in the hallway because there wasn't a very big selection of areas to choose from. So we actually made the little shelf for the students to hang all of their art pieces on that they made. And also the children right here are setting up everything. They're sorting colors, they're matching like shapes. They're going through just different sizes of everything, and it's really showing them that they are able to do the smallest things. And sometimes they don't understand that by doing this, they're actually learning as well. So in this slide as well, we have our little joy of Christmas to our right here. He is very into the holiday spirit. This is one of his favorite times of the year. The paper that he is holding is actually our flyer that he helped me create so that we could go around the school and advertise that we had our stores, and it said the name of our store, the date that it had opened. It was actually giving the hours of the store. Previously, before they really locked down on it, that we couldn't go in certain areas with the children, and that we kind of had to stay more into the classroom areas. The students were trying to do the announcements to let people know that the store was open. So in the video that you see to the left, we have our receptionist actually giving the announcement that one of our students gave before. I'm not gonna.
Kelly, are you able to change your settings and share your computer volume?
11. Again, the seasonal store is now open until 11, located by the gym. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree. So our students were working on making announcements, reading off the paper, talking into the phone prior to COVID. Unfortunately, there are some restrictions now. However, we still had our students working on creating memos across the school, reading them off the paper, and practicing those skills. Now, when it came to running the store, some skills that we identified for our students were opportunities to mend and communicate in the context of the event, increasing work duration, following complex directions, budgeting, using a calculator. So those are some of more advanced skills, while we still had our students working on some of the basic skills like waiting and manding for things. Here we have another video of one of our students making a sale to another student in the school.
Here's $2. Thank you. You're welcome.
Now this was the second day the store was open, and our student was doing everything completely independently. Needed a little help with making change, but other than that, everything was independent, and she was just thriving, was very happy, and there's so much excitement around this. Some other skills that we identified for running the store, we have turning towards others when his or her name is called and making 2 consecutive listener responses. We have waiting, like I said before, this is a student here who is working on those very basic skills. So waiting at a current location was something that was big for him. So we have him practicing that as we run the store. And in summary, so we just wanted to talk a little bit about the process to getting this far. There was a lot of conversation around what is a functional skill and what events we could put into place with all of the COVID restrictions, and just what we could do to incorporate all of the skills identified off the quick assessment. and put them on the floor. Here's a picture of Jamie, myself, and Bree kind of having that discussion. And we have those big smiles on our faces, and we decided to just go for it, put the store in place, and figure out the rest as it comes. And I think we have gotten pretty far now that we've identified skills. We just need to start that data collection and continue. Now that we are in quarantine and our store is canceled, we decided to go virtual so that our students can still work on all of those skills.
And really working on these events and coming up with like these different ways of learning and teaching our children, it actually has brought in a lot of my staff members in our room a better understanding of how to interact with our students, or just the littlest things can make the biggest difference. And I think that this was such a learning curve for all of us in the room, and to see how easy it is to come up with these little things and to see the kids grow so far and just the opportunities that we're giving them. It's just absolutely amazing.
Following this, we plan on identifying more events for our classroom in which we can incorporate all of the EFL goals into that as well.
And just to add to that, I think one of the unexpected next steps and outcomes that we saw from this was a lot of this was already happening on some level in some of our classrooms, and we haven't necessarily been our best advertisers and marketing department for our classrooms, and encouraging other folks to try and do this stuff too, and not necessarily come up with a perfect plan before we give it a go. So I think it's kind of brought a lot of these conversations out of the classrooms and out of the woodwork and into a more, how do we execute on this approach in all of our classrooms, which has been really nice.
That has been very nice. Amazing presentation, Kelly and Jamie. Really appreciate that. Any questions for this group? I see we're getting back on. I think we're almost on track.
I have a comment. That stuff's awesome, by the way. That making stuff and selling stuff. There's a guy that came to our school, our co-op last summer. He does stuff like that for public school kids that aren't special education. But there's websites and there's places you can go where students can make things and sell things outside of Etsy. It's kevinhoneycutt.org. I'll look into that. Great stuff. I mean, you can, like, your art drawings can become pillowcases, curtains.
Wow.
That's called Spoonflowers, that website.
If you wouldn't mind just typing that in the chat for us, I'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
I love it. This is great stuff.
And just to speak to Hillary, your question earlier, we don't have any clients who are in SBT, but we do some expedited SBT with some of our students. So I know we're really incorporating a lot of communication and toleration within the event. We've actually, like, the transitioning from the preferred activity to a non-preferred activity was something that we targeted for one of our students. But within these events, we were actually able to get buy-in from the students, and those toleration skills and the transitioning kind of came a lot easier once these events are in place. And then, of course, it's, you know, we're also probing for generalization outside, but I do feel like our data is looking really good around those types of skills. So it's not full SBT, but some expedited portions, aspects are incorporated into it.
I know that's been a question that other people have brought up, is wanting to get some more information around that expedited SBT. This is something more from the work that we're doing with Greg over the next couple months. It's been a challenge to try to capture some of this on film as we're going forward, as well as to get going with it as much as we would like to with traction due to the COVID issues. But that we're going to look at gathering that information, getting some video, some other data, so that we can share what exactly that looks like regarding Greg's approach around it. Very much in line with everything Pat, though, so it's pretty seamless. And those are for, you know, individuals in our program. Primarily, our kids are coming to our program due to issues around communication, toleration, collaboration with, you know, contextually appropriate behaviors. So those are, you know, that's our wheelhouse. We use this expedited SBT for kids that are showing, and adults that are showing, infrequent severe problem behavior, but something that you want to work on any of those areas, as Kelly indicated there. So be some more information coming out on that. Does anyone else have any questions? No? In the meantime, we will transition to our next team, and that is Tabby's group coming out of Chadwick's.
Hi, I'm Tabby, or Tabitha. I'm the senior BCBA at our Chadwick school. Our school is about half the size of the Utica campus. We typically have higher vocal verbal students who certainly still have some splinter skills, so the EFL has been really helpful with that. And I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Eduardo, our ABA instructor out of Chadwick's, to present on that.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. So today I'll be presenting on Chadwick's, on how we have gotten EFL going in our school. So to begin, Chadwick's is I'll give you an overview of the school. We're a pretty vocational school. Under normal conditions, like prior to COVID, a lot of our students would go to OC-EDs, which are occupational education, which are like them volunteering at local businesses to get practice getting job skills. So in general, we have 45 students, the ages of 12 to 21. Generally, they're higher vocal verbal students, but in general, lower on academic ratings. And generally all mild to moderate intellectual and developmental disabilities. At Chadwick's, we decided to start cooking club. We decided to do this because, one, we were restricted to COVID, so it's easy to get going at the school. Also, there's a lot of skills we can target in cooking club. A lot of the skills needed are also generalizable to jobs like the students will be working at OC-EDs, because some of the businesses they go to work at are restaurants, so a lot of the skills generalize, and all the essential aid skills generalize to all the job opportunities they could get. Both students and staff have a general preference for cooking, and there's also a high school to home applicability, so students who can learn a lot of skills here to go home and use those skills at home as well. So the process that we followed. So we first began with team meetings to kind of design functional activities to be done in the school. And we had to do this at first so that teachers and staff and even us, the behavior analysts, could kind of change our focus and really come up with activities that both the staff and students would enjoy, so that through those activities we could target skills. Once we had activities like the cooking club going, we completed quick assessments with the treatment team on each of the students. We did quick assessments to develop an understanding of the students' skill deficits, so we could more specifically target the skills that we thought were most appropriate during the different activities. Once quick assessments were done and we had our information on the student, we conducted initial assessments, which essentially is like a baseline to see where the student's at, so we can more specifically target the skills. Once initial assessments were done and we as a team kind of felt that the goals and the skills were appropriate, we have started to kind of review IEP goals to rewrite them so that the IEP goals can align with the essential skills that we're trying to teach. So these are some example quick assessments that were done at the school. As you can see, a lot of our students end up scoring pretty low in the essential 8, but score high outside, kind of demonstrating that splinter skills. Like they're really strong at matching, but toleration and weighting and other skills like that aren't generally as high or as strong. Here are some IEP goals that were in place at the beginning of this academic year that we thought we might want to rework. As a team, we kind of felt that especially the first 2 goals of reading sight words and telling time to the minute on the analog clock weren't as functional as a lot of the essential 8 skills. So as a team, we kind of reworked those to make them a little bit more functional. Next, I'm going to present a video of me and a student working in the cooking club. Not really working, but him cooking and us working on the skill of requesting help. This student is a general, really nice kid, very nice person, has decent vocal verbal skills. He does exhibit problem behavior he has a history of exhibiting problem behavior in certain environments that were deemed really challenging for him, likely unable to ask for help or ask others to assist him, so causing him to exhibit problem behavior in those environments. And as a consequence, he was restricted. So here we are in the school, working on him asking for help while in the cooking club.
Now we need 3 tablespoons of water, Nate. Do you know what 3 tablespoons is? Do you need help? Yeah, sure. So we're gonna. Now 2 more. Need a little bit more water.
Yep.
Yeah, sure, Nate. Good job. Here. Yeah, sure, buddy. Yeah.
Mate, how is it? It's good. You made it yourself? Oh yeah.
So that was just an example of how kind of showing the whole process, like showing the whole skill teaching process of both the activity plus how we were teaching that skill within the activity. This is another example of another student working at Chadwick's, working on both asking for help, and this was also part of the cooking club, but also teaching her how to make a highly preferred food that she enjoys eating a lot.
Want to try the jelly now? Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what you can do, Morgan, all by yourself.
Now. Help?
It's asking for help.
So those were 2 examples of us implementing the functional event-based learning and the skills targeted taught through those different activities. Here is an example of us using remote learning. After Thanksgiving, we entered our second shutdown. So as a result, a lot of the stuff that we were kind of doing in program kind of got halted. So here teachers are getting creative, implementing the cooking club at home, like through via Zoom. And they're not really taking EFL goals or targeting specific skills or anything like that. But through this, they're keeping the momentum going so that when the kids get back, we can more specifically target the specific skills in the cooking club. And for our future plans and kind of what we learned from this whole process, for future, we want to expand the activities. We want to get more EFL data going. We've kind of gotten the bare bones going, but it's been a little bit hard getting a whole data collection process going for the EFL goals. We need to get more staff training for sure. So that, because I think a barrier that we kind of initially saw was that we were taking cold probe data of the students' skills in the first opportunity of the day. But following that, it's a little bit hard for staff to remember to implement the proper prompt when trying to teach these skills, not only just the cooking club or specific event-based activities, but throughout the day entirely. So that's a future plan of ours. And we're also going to incorporate EFL goals into the PAYS Lab, which is like it's like a job simulation center that we have in the school where students can work on specific job-like activities like measuring wood, working on Excel graphs, and other activities like that. And some takeaway points based on our experience so far with the EFL is that, like everyone's pretty much said, is that it's really important to get the activities going so you can kind of get the goals and see where the kids are at in those specific activities. And that don't worry about the data, just get the activities going. But yeah, that's pretty much all. It's everything from me. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I think that the biggest lesson that I learned from Victory Academy from Christina and Emily was to live life now and take data later. And like everyone has said, you can often get your event going, your club, your store, whatever event you choose, and you can see with your eyeballs. You don't need a whole assessment to show you. You can see the skills that your kid needs to work on. Get that event going, and then when you have time, identify those EFL skills and you can embed them into your event later.
I think that was the quote of the presentation, see with your eyeballs. It's a great way to see, right? And to help move things forward. Great presentation, Eduardo. Really appreciate that. All right, we're going to go on to, does anyone else have any questions? Nope. All right, we're going to go on to our last group, and Dr. Vanderzel is going to present her team.
Hello, everyone. Last but not least is the group from Rome. So just a little bit of background on our demographics. We're kind of a mixture of the Utica program and the Chadwick's program. We have about 50 students. However, primarily our students are residential students, so they're in the most restrictive educational placement you can be in New York State. Alicia Zielinski, who is our ABA instructor, and Heather Johnson, our senior teacher, are going to be presenting today on their roommate retail.
So there are 5 students in my classroom. Like Mara said, all of my students are residentially placed and all at the high school age level. They have a wide range in abilities and a wide range of functional communication skills, from nonverbal to fluently verbal. They also all have a wide range of functional academic skills, prerequisite skills, daily living skills, and other skills.
So we decided to create a retail business to incorporate EFL skills into. So we sold different prepared food items to the other staff in the school. And some of the essential skills that our students were lacking, which is one of the reasons why they're residential students, are waiting, requesting, mask toleration, working independently, transitioning. So we were able to incorporate and embed these into our retail business, which overall kind of allowed us to have more collaboration with the school community and more school involvement overall with our students.
So another reason why we decided to do retail was we were able to develop a generic weekly lesson plan that covered a wide range of activities and skills that we taught each day of the week. So this allowed us to complete the same set of tasks each day, and the routine of the business became repetitive for the students, which is really important. It also allowed us flexibility to incorporate multiple food items into the same lesson plan, but we weren't recreating the wheel each week.
So here's just a list of some examples of different prepared foods that we were able to make. So as you can see, we did some sweet items like muffins and cookies, and we even did some meals like chicken riggies, pasta salad.
So moving on to the skills, this is Joey. Joey is an 18-year-old student with autism. He is a nonverbal student who utilizes PECS as his mode of communication. Here he is shown requesting staff to draw him a picture. Drawing with staff is a highly preferred activity that he asks for frequently throughout his day. Our next skill, this is Quinn. Quinn is an 18-year-old student that enjoys talking with staff about people's names, the vehicles that they drive, and the places he would like to work in the future. It can be very challenging to get Quinn to transition from these preferred activities to a work activity that is presented to him. So we started using a systematic chaining approach to ease that challenge of transitioning by breaking it down into smaller steps. So first we asked Quinn to put his pencil down. Then we asked him to put his drawing items in a different location. Sometimes we had to ask him to stand up and relocate, and then we would present the task to him. So in this video, you'll see that process, and also Quinn asking for a spoon to stir the frosting. Put your pen down. Put your papers on the floor. And your pen. All right, so I put your food coloring in. I need you to stir it for me. Good job,
So here's just an example of the data sheet that goes along with this skill, transitioning from preferred to non-preferred or required activities. So this one demonstrates cold probe data. So we only took data for the first trial of the day. And the descriptions for all these abbreviations are on the EFL app, but essentially you document what type of problem behavior occurred and what type of prompt level was required.
This is Daniel. Daniel is a 19-year-old student who has a traumatic brain injury and has limited use of the right side of his body. He has some mobility concerns, and we wanted to provide him the greatest amount of independence that we can. So we taught him to operate his own wheelchair by using his feet and propelling himself down the hallway. In this video, he's shown distributing flyers for our business. This is a task that he's now able to perform with complete independence. Daniel's also highly motivated by staff attention, but it often prevents him from completing tasks that he does know how to do with independence, usually because he's seeking staff attention while performing the task. So now that we have him completing tasks independently, it's helped him to be able to complete tasks independently as well as completing consecutive tasks independently without seeking as much staff attention.
So here's the data that goes along with this goal, and we're just marking down how many tasks they completed consecutively independently. So this is Chris. Chris is a nonverbal student and he engages in a lot of stereotypy. He also does not have any number sense. So this video is showing him packaging crackers for our chili that we made. And this is the first time he's using this type of counting jig to package the correct amount of crackers into the bag. And this jig is an example of a permanent environmental adaptation that he can use throughout his life to achieve independence.
This one has floor in it because one fell on the floor.
This top video is Alex. Alex is a 15-year-old student. He is highly verbal, but it can be very challenging to motivate him to participate in group activities and especially interact with peers. So here he is shown working as part of his classroom community to put muffin batter into the muffin pan. So now that we've increased his engagement in these functional type activities, we've also been able to increase his interactions with peers. They pick them up early. That one's too big, man. You need a little less.
That's better.
Yeah, that's better.
I can go for a sandwich. I can go for a sandwich.
I mean, me too, but. In the bottom video, Joey is shown placing stickers on bags that were used to put items in to sell. So this we incorporated into his skill-based treatment trials as one of his cabs.
And then here we have a video of Quinn, who is washing dishes as part of the cleanup process. So we wanted to include some of the lessons learned in transitioning from traditional academics to the EFL curriculum. One of the main things that we were able to do to get staff buy-in was stressing the why by emphasizing that these students are in our program because they don't have these essential functional skills, and that we can really improve their overall quality of life by increasing their independence in these areas.
We want to also stress the importance of high levels of collaboration. So we are always in constant collaboration between myself, Alicia, our behavior specialist assistant, the additional classroom staff, and our therapy department. We're always having conversations within each of those departments around how we can help these students better achieve these skills.
We also started off really slow. So we had one goal for one student, and then we added another goal for other students, slowly having multiple goals for all of our students. We established a rotational schedule for staff that added some structure to the day and ensured that each student was getting those skills worked on throughout the day.
We also worked a lot with one-on-one modeling and teaching staff in real time. So we worked a lot with staff on how to teach these skills, how to accurately take data, when to move on to the next prompting level, how and when to reinforce the student. And all of this we did in real time to make it more realistic for staff to be able to understand.
Also, Heather and I had a lot of discussion around where to put data sheets to maximize taking data in real time. So I remember we started off with them on a wall, we moved them to a different location on a door, we tried putting them in binders, and we finally settled on having the data sheets right next to or right at the student's desk so that they're easily accessible throughout the day.
This also brings up, we had a lot of conversations on cold probe data versus trial by trial data collection for accountability. So we had a lot of conversations about both types of data and which would be most effective. We found that staff were more apt to continue trials throughout the day if there was an accountability factor to it. So we decided to track the first trial of the day for our own data purposes, but then we also tracked data by trial throughout the day to ensure that enough trials were being run for each skill and that all staff were running trials with each student.
Heather and I also have 2 classroom meetings per week with the whole team, and we discuss 2 to 3 students at these meetings. So they're a regular way to constantly keep in contact with the team, ensure that everybody is trained on how the skills are being taught. It allows time for extra training and to discuss barriers and do some problem solving around that.
And lastly, video evidence has really helped staff to see the importance in what we're doing with our students. They're able to see the gains that students are making, the impact that they're having on the students, the independence that we're creating for our students, and how quickly students are acquiring these new skills. We also had a lot of unplanned outcomes. So as we increased the levels of engagement by introducing these functional activities, we had quite a reduction in problem behavior, which was really good to see. Daniel has always had a hard time wrapping his head around the fact that even though he has limited use of the right side of his body, there is still a lot he can do. It can be very challenging to get him to look ahead to his future and get him in the mode of someday having a job or even doing things for himself. When we started Roommate Retail, we were bagging cookies one day and Daniel stated
that he could see himself working in a bakery one day. So to have him say those words was a huge accomplishment for him.
And then for Alex, some of Alex's medications make it so he's very tired throughout the day. Prior to beginning roommate retail, he spent most of the day sleeping. So since we started incorporating more functional essential skills into his day to engage in, he started being awake for most of the day, which was really awesome.
For Chris, the highlight for him was when we started roommate retail, we had a difficult time working with food with him because he would attempt to eat the food. We worked with him by completing the food-related tasks for a few seconds and then reinforced not eating the food by providing him a small amount of food that he enjoyed. So within only a few times of doing this, we can now work with him on food-related tasks, and he is no longer eating the food.
So Joey is a student who has a history of low toleration skills related to work-related tasks. So he's been enrolled in skill-based treatment for a while. And it was a great outcome that we were able to incorporate EFL skills and roommate retail activities right into his CAB branches. So that's kind of how we incorporated and integrated SBT with EFL in this case.
And lastly, Quinn, as stated earlier in the presentation, we had a very difficult time transitioning him from preferred activities like drawing and talking with staff to those work-related tasks that we were presenting him. So we can now transition him using the chaining approach that I talked about earlier, and he's now transitioning without problem behavior.
Thanks, guys. That was great. I guess to circle back to Hillary's question about the skill-based treatment and how do you fold in EFL. So with that student, we kind of track his communication and toleration skills through the skill-based data sheet, and then we're targeting more vocational skills and other related skills through the CAB branches. So we were just circling like a CAB 6, and knowing that he's working on packaging and other rolling silverware, setting tables, doing other things like that as part of his CAB. So it's kind of taking data collection in 2 different modalities, I guess.
Terrific presentation. Does anyone else have any other questions for this crew here? I can't see the people that have their cameras off, but the ones that have their cameras on don't look like they have any questions. Any broader questions that people want to bring up related to moving these things forward in program? I think one of the things that's amazing here, I guess I just asked a question, then I'm going to talk, was for us, this is really a major shift with moving our program forward. A lot of it really started with the work that we did with Greg, where you could see the possibilities. But I think one of the things that we realized as we were going through those CAB branches is we didn't know exactly what we wanted to work on. That kind of brought in the EFL to us. And just to see these teams now working on the activities that they're working on, really, for me, paints a picture for the future of our program, both for our students that are in our Trade Wins program as well as our adults, in that how we can help teach some exceptional skills with activities that don't need to really be too time-consuming to develop, and don't need rocket science to put algorithms in place before you put those into play. I mean, I think that's the biggest message is there's a lot that can be done very quickly, and you can always shape up the whole data collection process along the way, but getting going with skills that are going to have more of an impact on individuals' lives rather than less, and that are just kind of time consuming. And that's really the transition that we've been going through. Shout out to these groups that presented today. I tell you what, they came in on Friday. We did a dry run with this, and there wasn't really much feedback that we needed to give any of them because their presentations were so tight. They really delivered, I think both some nice areas around content as well as around process and how do you make these things go with a group of staff that haven't been used to doing these kind of things. So kudos to this group, these groups that were presenting today. Anything else for the good of the order?
I was going to make a quick comment. You guys, first of all, everything was awesome. It was, I felt, as Tyra Sellers would say, like a unicorn, hearing all the, the great, and that makes total sense. You guys are thinking about your learners and your setting. One thing I noticed a lot of you guys saying, which I wanted to point out that we also found was, and I've gotten questions from different people on baseline data. How do you decide where to start? How do you design stuff? Do you write a whole program sheet? And I think what you guys highlighted was, first of all, no, you can't, like you can script out early skills like BB map skills, like WH questions, or you know, there's a scope and sequence that you either follow or you don't, and you continue or you drop off. But these learners are so varied and unique. You know, the EFL isn't built as a scope and sequence. And so my answer usually is no, like I don't write program sheets for EFL programs because you don't know where they're gonna go. You have, the data sheets are the program sheet, right? And a lot of you guys mentioned like, do you take data before or go off your quick assessment? Like, yes, but also what you realize is what you think a student may do when you actually put it in context where people are enjoying it, the performance can be very different than you expected. So all the more reason, right, to like try it, get it started. And then almost like, I mean, it's like these are students that have a very hard time generalizing. So your baseline of what you expect isn't going to be what you thought until you do it. And cooking club could be different than craft club or whatever. So those are a couple comments. And then just a little nugget, and I'm happy, well, we're gonna put together a whole bunch of data on our preference assessments that we just took that highlights a lot of what you guys just said. So we try to expose to similar events for like 2 to 3 months. And then we stop and do a lot of preference assessments. And we've had different teams choose, I'll let them choose areas to do their preference assessments on. And some of the teams that have been doing this for like now in year 2 chose to actually look at clubs and look at, so after being exposed to clubs, which ones they're choosing, and then what parts of the clubs they like. So in our coffee delivery cart, do they like making the coffee? Do they like delivering it? Or, you know, do they like taking the order and checking off the order or whatever? And some of the, we haven't graphed it all totally, but my lead teacher was like texting me up a storm and like photos of all the data. And so we did a MS, whatever, the multiple stimulus with removal. I've shared the data sheet before, but we've embedded happiness indicators into our preference assessments. So super interesting. These are older learners that are like high school age. They may, you can't necessarily trust, they may choose something first because maybe they think it's what they're supposed to choose, or like maybe they think, I don't know, it's morning, I'm supposed to make coffee because we usually do that in the morning. I don't know. But when we graphed there, so we quantified like high, low, and neutral. So the cap could be, and we did 3 sessions each. So you have a ceiling and a number you could look at. The ones they chose first didn't always have all the happiness indicators. So that was really eye-opening for us to be like, oh, like when we quantify for a learner when they're happy, they're not necessarily choosing it first. So that was something, that's something I feel like interesting to think about what we're doing. And then another piggyback on some of the retail stuff. I think it's a balance, right? Of finding, you want detail, like, yeah, some kids, we want the detailed data on requests or waiting or participation or whatever. We're finding a lot of success in tracking data on duration of either participating, like being there versus participating with materials. And then what our groups are doing that are more involved in like the production. Our pop-up shop actually unexpectedly made $1,200 in a week. And all the excess we were able to give back to students as paychecks. And we were able to look at the duration data to see how much you participated, and that's how we divvied up the cash, which was pretty cool. And then we were able to ask the family, like, here's your choices for, you know, how you want the paycheck. So do you want cash? Do you want, you know, do you have a bank account system, or do you want them to look on Amazon and make choices to be delivered to your home? So some of the parents were even blown away with, you know, the choice, you bring up choices. So anyway, all that, I think all this is great. And we've just kind of learned even more than, you know, it's like you're always learning more the more you dig in. So those are some of the things we just kind of that were brought up that we're going to dig into more. And hopefully, I'm hoping to have a year's worth of data to present in the fall. So
look at you with a year's worth of data to present. That's awesome. I love that.
Well, I got something to be accountable for, so. That's
right. And I think Shweta also wants you to be accountable for doing a presentation on data collection.
Got it.
So put that on your plate, and we'll see if we can get that done sometime in the first quarter of 2021.
Well, just to put it out there, I am an old school data collector. We take all paper data, and I have a plan with my team to like get color pencils out and like color in bar graphs over break. So if anyone's on the technical side that can help out with that, might be appreciated.
And there was another question in there as well. Was this the first hangout? We did have Christina and Emily's hangout was recorded, I believe, and was posted, right? Do we know if that was recorded and posted?
I think we couldn't record because we were figuring out waiver stuff with our crew, and we did have photos and videos, and now we've been able to nail down what exactly our releases cover, and so now in the future we kind of know. So I think that wasn't recorded because we weren't quite sure at that point what we could share and couldn't share.
Very much caught up in legal. So, but going forward, we will try to get as many of these recorded, get them online, and so that I think these videos do speak to the process much better than just talking about it. And so it's nice to see these emotion. I think it demystifies it as well with what exactly you're trying to do. Cool. Well, we made our time, 1:28.
Question.
Oh, yes.
Just 2 more minutes. Okay. I know that most everyone here works in schools. I also work in schools, but I also maintain a private therapy side caseload. So do you know anyone who's using EFL for private therapy who would know how to intertwine this with authorizations? When you're saying like just do it and run with it, right? Like and figure out your data later, that doesn't work within a insurance funded model. You have to do all that work up front.
You write it into insurance.
Awesome. Okay, I messaged you, Christina, so we'll talk.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Well, I think that will conclude our presentations for today. So thanks so much for everybody for jumping in, and also for your participation just within the Facebook group. It's kind of up and running. We did the needs assessment earlier in the, I think in November. We're going to try to move on a lot of those areas where people indicated the content that they would like to see as part of that Facebook group. So that will kind of build over time, but the community certainly building. Nice cross collaboration with our friends over at the BCBA's using the ISCA, and we'll keep on rocking this freaking vision as we move into 2021. All right, be safe.